Hindsighters, thank you for tuning in to In Depth with Ty Barnett. I would like to give a special shout out to Amanda Bloom of crossovermedia.net or Crossover Media for always sending me the most creative and phenomenal artists, vocalists, musicians, etc. So shout out to you, Amanda, and thank you. So listen, guys, our special guest this evening is so phenomenal. He is an artistic director of the Skylark Vocal Ensemble, which is a premier vocal group known for its innovative and emotional, powerful performances. And they're celebrated all over this country. And mostly, Matthew is just, he's always resonated, and people talk to him about his thoughtfulness, right? And his creative programming. And it has earned him a reputation of one of the most innovative figures in the American choral music. And listen, guys, also, he's an original. His music and his pieces are stimulating, and they just make you feel like amazingly nauseating. I would like to add a word to what I haven't heard anybody call him in his works, frabjous. I mean, just when you hear it, especially the one we're going to talk about tonight, which is Clear Voices in the Dark, you're going to be blessed. Your soul's going to feel amazing from this significant acclaimed piece. It is a multiple Grammy nomination piece, and it's all due to Matthew and his amazing talents and then his amazing group. And so tonight, he's going to share with us about himself, how he came to create this amazing choir and their amazing travel. And then this piece, Clear Voices in the Dark, which is like a combination of Civil War era, which we all know is amazingly important to our history, right? And then the song of Pollock's figure, Umen. I mean, listen, you're gonna be blessed. I mean, the technical excellence and emotional depth that was created within this intellectually stimulating piece. I mean, it is profoundly moving. So you're going to have to sit back, because after the conversation with Matthew and I, you are going to hear Clear Voices in the Dark. I mean, I'm even going to have to ask him about this cover. I mean, it's like scaringly amazing, like who created this and all the great things. So again, it's going to deliver a griping and exquisite performance for us. And I just want you guys to know and hear from Matthew and know that this piece and all his other pieces, they're performed across the United States, and internationally. So if you ever want to hear this amazing group, you don't have to be just held to United States. They do it internationally as well. But hey, they also have performed at St. John Smith Square in London. And they don't only engage in just singing, they also do educational outreach. They conduct workshops and also residency at schools and colleges across the country. So one may ask, what instruments do they use? Listen, it's rather simple. Their voices. That's their instrument. That is their main instrument. So listen, I'm going to stop babbling at this moment, and I want to bring forth the amazingly frabjous Matthew Guard. So Matthew, thank you for joining Hindsight Media this evening.
Oh, it's my pleasure, Ty, and thanks for that crazy awesome introduction. I feel like I'm going to disappoint after that, but I'll do my best.
I seriously doubt it. I listen, you're not going to disappoint in any way, form, or fashion. So let's get it started. Matthew, share with the audience a little bit about you, where you come from, where are you located now, and how did you end up here with Skylark and creating all this greatness?
Yeah, of course. So I'm an Atlanta boy. I grew up in Georgia, from Marietta, and I spent my childhood there. And when I was a kid, I started to play piano when I was little, really little, but my mom was a piano teacher, so that didn't go so well because I rebelled against having the teacher in the house.
Mm.
Uh, then I did switch to trumpet, and then by high school, I got really involved in vocal and choral music. At the time, Robert Shaw, who was a really famous American choral conductor, was still with the Atlanta Symphony Orchestra Chorus as a conductor emeritus, and there were a lot of folks in Atlanta who came to Atlanta to sing in the ASO chorus and be part of his legacy. So I kind of grew up with that all around. And that was my first real formative experience in singing in choirs. I then went to college, and my freshman year got into a very serious choir, and then I was totally hooked. Um, and I spent most of my college years singing and not going to class as much as I should have, to be honest.
Mhm.
But then after that, I did not pursue music right away. I actually went and got a business degree and worked in business for a while. But then about 7, 8 years after started doing that, I realized that was just not where I was meant to be. And my wife and I started Skylark in 2011, and it was kind of an experiment to see if we could do a professional choir. And it's been a 13-year journey and learning how to do it. And we're at a we're starting to feel like we kind of know what we're doing, but we're still learning so much every day and every year that we're making music together. But it really is, it's a labor of love that starts off from being a kid singing in choir.
Wow. So tell me, where did the name Skylark come from?
Oh, it's a question. So there's two different angles I could tell you, and both of them are kind of true. So there's a famous romantic poem called "To a Skylark" by Shelley, the poet, and it talks about how the skylark just enchants everybody with its incredibly beautiful song as it's flying up to the heavens. And so that was kind of one kind of classical inspiration, but then there's also a fantastic jazz standard, Skylark, written by Hoagie Carmichael, performed by many amazing singers like Billie Holiday, which also talks about the Skylark having this magical song. And I love classical music, but I also really enjoy a good jazz standard or just a simple, beautiful song. And so it seemed really apropos to have both possible inspirations for our name.
I love that. So if we're looking at the artistic process, can you tell me like what is your approach to interpreting like all of your performances and complex works like the Palant figure humane?
Yeah, of course. So a lot of music that's written for choir is kind of serious and a little bit difficult to get into if you don't have a pathway in to listen
Mm,
to it. And so I feel like my job as artistic director is to create programs that draw people in, and make the music interesting and relevant because of the context that they're in. So we've done a variety of things like this. We've done programs where we have a narrator tell a story and we put music through the story, kind of like the Peter and the Wolf thing you might have heard as a kid. We've done programs where we've combined visual art and music, or history and music, or math and music, and or all different disciplines, trying to find a way to present our music in a way that makes it interesting to an audience that's not just a straight choral music crowd. And this album called Clear Voices in the Dark is one of our I think really important examples of this, because we have this crazy piece of music written by this French composer Francis Poulenc, written during World War II, during the Nazi occupation of France in 1943. He wrote this really gnarly, difficult piece during that time, and it was meant to be an inspiration to the people of France to regain their homeland. And he hoped that it would be performed on the day of liberation.
mm.
Um, but this piece it's pretty wild. It's hard to listen to at times. It's beautiful, but it also is pretty just tough if it's your first time listening to it. It's also really hard to sing because it's one of the most difficult pieces ever written for choir. And so my idea to make this piece accessible to someone who's never heard it before was to take music from the Civil War time period, so 80 years before, in a very similar historical context, but with a very different musical style. And we've interspersed American Civil War songs in between the 8 movements of this piece by Poulenc. And so you have, on the one hand, really complex, difficult music, and in between each one of those things, something very simple and accessible and beautiful that's on the same themes of people trying to endure during a time of tragedy.
Absolutely. And I can agree with that and say that in listening to it, it definitely has like that powerful cross-cultural statement about the expressive powerful of the arts. And as you mentioned, during the times of tragedy. So that's definitely something that I can hear within Clear Voices in the Dark. And it's just, it is moving. And like you said, it could be hard to listen to if you do not understand history from World War II and the American Civil War era. So I would say listen up on that and take a listen, but it's good and it's deep. So I definitely enjoyed the piece, and great job and kudos to you. So we talked,
Thanks.
oh, yeah, absolutely. So how do you select the repertoire for Skylark's performances and recordings?
Oh, it kind of depends on the program. I usually try to find out to pick a theme first. Like what's this concert going to be about?
Mhm.
Um, and then I will go from there. And I usually will I do a lot of research. I mean, Spotify is an incredible resource to find stuff. There's all kinds of online libraries. I have lots of colleagues and friends I've worked with over the years who I call to bring music together. And I try to pick music that will fill a concert of about an hour. We don't do 2 or 3 hour concerts. We do kind of
Oh.
pretty quick, compact, no intermission, powerful concerts.
Mm.
I try to pick music that has a variety of different voicings and styles. So some things that are really strong group pieces, some things that might highlight individual soloists a lot more, or even have a single soloist sing something without anybody else. I try to mix up fast and slow and beautiful and difficult and try to create a journey for the audience. But it all kind of comes down to a theme and what the concert's about. This year we have a variety of different concerts that we are putting together. One is actually next week, and it's on the theme of The Legend of Sleepy Hollow, so the classic Halloween story. So that was a program to pick stick that fits that vibe. We have a couple of Christmas concerts this year where we're going to be going into more traditional holiday, beautiful choral music. And then we have a concert next March that's based on things that fly, so birds and other beasts. And so I'm choosing music based on that. So it is very thematic, our process.
And I love that. So if we talk about your, because we know that within trying to create things and to get to your next best step, there can be challenges and triumphs. So what would you say are some of your biggest challenges, or have been some of your biggest challenges that you've faced as an artistic director, and how have you overcome them?
It's a good question. I think that the big challenge was figuring out what my job was in the first place, honestly.
Okay.
Um, so Skylark is an all professional group. So all the artists that we have are full-time musicians whose career is in music, and most of them make their full-time career in singing. Some of them are also teach voice, or they might work at a college or have a church program or something, but they're all full-time musicians. And I grew up singing in choirs of students and amateurs, and singing in college with student choirs. And in those groups, oftentimes the job of the director is to kind of whip the choir into shape and fix notes that are not right and make them sing the same vowel at the same time and make sure it's all together. And that's just not the job of a artistic director of a group of professionals. They honestly could do the work without me a lot of the time. And for the first few years, I hadn't really learned that lesson, and I was trying to kind of use some tricks of being a conductor of working with 16 to 20-year-olds that just are
Mhm.
not relevant for adult professionals. And it actually was this program, Clear Voices in the Dark, when I kind of realized that my job was actually to pick music and design programs that inspire our people to give their best, and to be interested and engaged and want to perform and want to focus, and not just perform a concert that's the same old, just the music that's always chosen. And so I think that lesson was a really important one. To the leadership in a group like this is not about top down and exerting your will. It's more about allowing people to be inspired by something that they can work on together.
Absolutely. So is there any particular memorable moment during your performance of Skylark? What has been like your favorite? if there's one.
Oh man. Yeah, so that's tough. I mean, so I think the moments that I come back to are the ones where there's either a huge audience experiencing something together and we're really in the moment with 500 people and the audience for something really beautiful,
Mhm.
which has happened on multiple occasions, when it was just everyone's just locked in. But maybe even more so the moments where there's nobody in the room except for us in a
Hmm.
rehearsal or a recording, and you kind of realize that what you're doing is so special. There was one recording session we did back in 2016, one of our first commercial recordings, and there's this beautiful setting of the Lord's Prayer. That's written by a Russian composer who actually fled Russia in 1917 and is never allowed to go back to his homeland. And he wrote this setting of the Our Father, the Lord's Prayer, um, for his little vocal quartet that toured around Europe singing Russian folk songs. And we recorded this, and we started off having me conduct and try to control what was going on and lead it. And then I realized that was not what this piece needed. The piece just needed to be everybody needed to stand in a circle and just sing it together and allow it to happen. And so I just actually sat down on the floor, and closed my eyes, and the choir sang that piece. And that take of that prayer, I think, was almost the entire take that we took for the final cut of the recording. And that's actually our most played track on Spotify. So I think people could hear that something special was happening there.
Oh, wow. So I'll definitely make sure, even with this album, that I drop that in there too, so the audience can hear that if they have not already. So you speak about that being one of your best. So being a cappella, how important is it to have a room with great acoustics and things of that sort? And how do you even choose such a room? Do you guys look at that when you're looking for a venue, like the acoustics of a room? Explain that to us.
Oh, absolutely. I wish it didn't matter so much, honestly. It's I sometimes think about it. It's kind of like if you take a choir of amazing voices and take them into a really not good room, like, imagine like a room that's covered in shag carpet, like on the
Mm,
walls and the floor. It's kind of like taking the best piano player in the world and having them play on a kind of an out of tune old upright piano that has some missing keys. Like, it just doesn't work. It's a waste of the talent and the experience. So it's for us, it's really important to find rooms that have nice resonant acoustics. But we also don't want it to be such a big room that doesn't feel intimate and the audience is not connected and part of the sound. So actually the sweet spot's a little bit hard to find. The sweet spot we tend to think is a room that holds maybe 200 to 300 people, but has really live acoustics where we can kind of play the room kind of like you play a wine glass when you put water on it and you put your finger around the outside and it makes a really beautiful sound. Like, that's what we do with the choir and a really nice acoustic.
wow. So now we go and we start talking about impact and outreach. We know that we came out of this thing of COVID, right? That was just bonkers. But what role do you believe music plays in times of like social or personal crisis? And how did Skylark continue on and help with, you know, keeping the world in tune with who they are and keeping you guys relevant in the time of crisis?
I think music is vital. It's
Mhm.
kind of um, it's good for the soul, right?
Yes.
It's what people need. People need beauty, and they need connection, and music can provide both those things. It's really difficult when everyone's locked in their house. How we responded to COVID, we actually went online and created an online series that we called Skylark Plus, where we released a program basically every week for a year. A lot of them were solo programs. People would record their own solo program. There's some things were Q&A, some things were interviews about music. But we tried to have something every week for our audience. And we actually built up an online audience of hundreds of subscribers who were taking part in that community during COVID. We also, during COVID, recognized that a lot of student choirs couldn't get together and couldn't rehearse. And so we actually created an online learning program where we took a quartet of our artists into a recording studio and we created a really uh, full online teaching module with recordings and videos for 8 different pieces for student choirs. And we also commissioned 2 new pieces for that from composers during COVID, from Nell Shaw Cohen and Jonathan Woody, who are both contemporary composers writing right now. So we were trying to provide a vehicle for composers to write music, for our singers to record it, and then for student choirs to take part by singing along with us in virtual form. So that's how we dealt with that year and a half where we couldn't be together at all.
Wow. And I know that was kind of tough. So I'm happy that you guys were able to navigate or pivot and be able to help. And I think that was a piece that may have been missing from the world that we didn't even know that it was part of our future. It was there, but now it's more robust where internet and being able to do things of this sort and not have to be face to face, but still touch people from all around the globe by internet. So that's amazing, right?
Yeah, oh, totally, totally.
Absolutely.
We have listeners. We can look, and when we see our albums on Spotify or Apple Music, we can see listeners all over the world,
Yeah.
which is really cool.
Absolutely. So you guys have done some amazing collaborations. And how do you, as the creative director, choose who you collaborate with? Or do people just come to you with ideas? Or do you go, how does that balance look?
Oh, it's both. We reach out when we have an idea that we feel like it would be really we benefit from having another voice in the room, another talent. And then we also have gotten some inbound requests to collaborate that have been great. I mean, just earlier this year, back in April, we had been approached by a wonderful jazz and classical pianist named Dan Tepfer, who is a wonderful performer and composer. One of his COVID super fans, like you were just talking about, commissioned him to write a piece for choir and piano. And they came to us and asked us to be the choir. And so we we spent 3 or 4 days rehearsing with this wonderful, internationally renowned jazz and classical piano player, and did a series of 4 concerts with him in New York and around the Northeast. And it was all on the theme of parent-child love, because Dan had lost his mother a few years ago, and he wrote the piece in memory of his mother. Um, and so that whole piece, the whole program came about because of that inbound collaboration opportunity, which was really cool.
Wow, yes, it is, man. And then, so you're speaking to that oftentimes things are created through tragedy or through heartbreaks and things of that sort. But that's, oftentimes that what music truly is. And it makes for sometimes a great piece, which comes from a hurtful heart, but it gives you a beautiful future spirit. So I think that sometimes is beautiful. So if we're looking at the inspiration and concept, what inspired you to create Clear Voices in the Dark? But before you answer that, I know this is kind of loaded. That cover, the album cover, oh my gosh, it's like scary but loving. It's like, oh, I just want to jump through it, but do I really? So, who designed that, and where did you get that inspiration from?
Oh, that's a really good question. Yeah, artwork is tough. Sometimes I mean, you kind of realize that that little thumbnail is going to be the first thing people see when they look on their phone and on their streaming service. That one, so sometimes we've created artwork ourselves or asked an artist to help us. That one actually is an etching from an artist named Brian Cohen that I met through a composer friend of mine. And back when we were doing the thoughts for this album cover, I kind of had some ideas of what it might look like, and um, I was talking to friends about, hey, do you know anybody that has something that's appropriate for this? And my friend said, why don't you just reach out to this guy Brian and see what he has, because I think that it could be really interesting. And so Brian sent a lot of his work, and this is one of his larger scale etchings that he had done, and we zoomed in on a bit. So it kind of creates that feeling of walking through these scary woods. Uh, and I think that there's all kinds of things you can draw from it. It also looks a little bit like barbed wire, or like a line during a war or something.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, I don't know what it. I think each person probably takes a different thing from it, but the piece is really about going into and emerging from darkness, and I think that the cover creates a visual experience of that. Um, you asked about the inspiration for the album overall, and I think it's to the point of how do humans respond with beautiful art when there's nothing else that seems beautiful in the world, when things are really bad. Um,
Mm.
and I think that's all this music is from two time periods where there was really terrible tragedy unfolding. And I think that unfortunately that's kind of the human condition. Right now, as we're talking today, there are places in the world where there is unspeakable tragedy unfolding, and there are people dealing with that. And I think that creating a program of music from two different times and two different kind of cultures and moments of people responding to that and showing the beauty that people can create is really important and really powerful.
Well, that's amazing. So would you say that there were any, or did you guys have any like technical demands with such difficult work?
Oh yeah, this is really hard music. We had to rehearse it a lot. We we had about 4 days of rehearsal on this album, and then we did two concerts, and then we did 4 days of recording, and then we did two more concerts. So this was a really intense project for us. Usually our artists come together for 4 or 5 days. This was almost 2 weeks. And for us, this was actually our third time doing this program. The first time was in 2015. Then we came back to it in 2017 and did it in New York and Washington. Performed it actually at New York Avenue Presbyterian Church, in the church that has Abraham Lincoln's pew, which was quite something. And then we came back to it. We were supposed to come back to it in 2020, and then COVID shut us down. So it was actually 7 years between the second and third time we did it. But a lot of our artists were on all three of those programs. So this piece is kind of in people's blood at this point.
Wow. So now do you all reside like in the same state, or are you all over the globe? And how do you come together? Like, do you just, there are like periods of time where you know you're going to be touring and doing work in pieces that you guys stay? What does that look like for you guys?
Yeah, we have an ensemble of about 30 professional singers from across the US.
Hmm.
There's actually one or two who are abroad, who are Americans living in Europe right now. Um, and we come together on a project basis for individual projects of usually like about a week at a time. And so
Hmm.
we'll get together and rehearse for 2 or 3 or 4 days, then we'll perform a concert tour or do a recording. And that happens every month or two throughout the year. And people are in the interim doing other fantastic musical endeavors, being soloists at Lincoln Center in New York or Boston Symphony Hall, or running a college choir program or teaching voice. And it's a really wonderful, talented group of people with all like very different strengths and different genres that they excel in. So it creates a really wonderful mix of hearts and souls and talents when we come together.
And you guys sound phenomenal. So with that, all of the, I mentioned earlier that your voice is your instrument, right?
Mhm.
So how do you go about keeping your voices good and training and things of that sort? I know you say how you come together, but that is your instrument. That is your savior. That's how you guys entertain us as your audience. So what warm-ups and things that you guys do on a regular to ensure that you can give us the most amazing performance?
Well, these folks are all really extremely experienced and well-trained vocalists, a lot more than I am. To be honest, I'm definitely not a good enough singer to be in the group, nor would my warm-up regime be super helpful. Uh, these are folks who show up warmed up, ready to go, who have their own personal training routine, an elite athlete, what the training program is for somebody who has to be playing in a football game on Sunday. They're working all week, and it's the same way for these vocal athletes. And everyone is responsible for their own vocal health, and they're generally amazing at it.
Wow. So would you say that on a personal reflection, has this specific project changed you personally and professionally, and how so?
Yeah, absolutely. It definitely has. Well, like I said, the first time we did this program, I kind of learned what my job was. Um, And then I think by the last time we did it, we finally got the piece right. Honestly, if I'm honest, this piece is so hard, Ty, that like
Yeah.
it was never right. Not 100% right. I mean,
Okay.
maybe 95% right. But having the chance to spend so much time on it and record it and really refine it and get it to a point where it's polished enough that you actually have permission to feel something
Wow.
was big, you know? Because like sometimes when you're doing high level music, it's you're doing a lot of science because just to figure out like how to do it.
Sure.
But you don't, if you try to do the art or the heart part too soon, that you end up messing things up. And for this, it's like it's amazing to get to a point where you have permission to feel something because you've tackled the technical side and really mastered it. And having the ability to feel this piece at a time when there's so much tragedy in the world was really it was kind of overwhelming for some of us. After our last concert of this, we had 4 or 5 artists who burst into tears.
Wow. So would you say that will be one of your most rewarding aspects of bringing Clear Voices in the Dark to life? Or what would be the most rewarding aspect of bringing it to life?
Well, I think with the recording, you gotta think that the most rewarding thing is having the opportunity for people who never would hear you in concert to be exposed to what we're doing and to be moved by our music. And then this conversation is an example. The fact that recording being out in the world gives us the chance to have conversations on radio and get our music out there is really, really special. And in this interconnected world, we had a video. I mean, kind of a wild little thing of social media quirk, but this piece, the last note of this program has a crazy high note. It's a high E
Mhm.
above high C and a soprano. It's like a scream. And we a couple of weeks ago put together a video showing our amazing soprano one, Sarah Moyer, in the session singing that high E. And then we put together about 10 different faces reactions uh, right after it happened into a little montage of like 30 seconds. So you could see her singing the note and you could see her colleagues like gasping at what she'd just done. And that video has gotten like 250,000 views across different social media platforms. And we never would have gotten that exposure for our music without something like this to catalyze it. So I think being able to spread what we're doing to a larger audience and inspire people through our music is really why we do things like this.
Listen, I agree with you 100%. So hearing that, I'm literally a person that analyzes everything. And I was looking at that album and trying to figure out the song. So as I was listening to the song and looking at the album, trying to figure out how the two gel, right? I do
Mhm.
that. I know weird. So in all honesty, the name came to me at that high note. I was like, clear voices in the dark. I get it now. All from that high note. I know that sounds crazy,
Yeah.
but I tell you, that's when it resonated for me.
No, no, totally. You got to the end. I mean, the end is there's a big payoff at the end of this album if you get to it.
Yes, I was like, oh, clear. Okay, that high note. I get it. It all came full circle for me in that moment. So it's so bonkers that you actually said that. I love it.
Oh,
And
so
so,
cool.
yes, now let me ask you this because how do you choose or how did you choose the vocalist for Clip Voices in the Dark? Like, does everybody get selected or is there like an audition or are there certain soloists or vocalists that you pit together to choose for certain projects?
Also, we have a roster, and we will at the start of our season try to offer our roster programs we think that they would enjoy, that they would excel at, that kind of spreads the love around the ensemble. This particular program, there's some folks who had been doing it with us for a long time, and people who loved it.
Mhm.
And so that those people who had the experience of like 9 years of this piece were at the top of the list for this when we staffed this particular project.
Mhm.
We thought we'd really enjoy Poulenc, who we know likes that kind of music. Other folks have said like, I don't like that piece, and so we didn't didn't offer it to those folks because you don't want them to be miserable. But we really have we value having a lot of experience on with our group and having a lot of shared experience, and so we tend to be really loyal to our folks, and we add people every year when we have substitute opportunities, but we rarely lose people. And so we end up just kind of spreading our projects around based on people's schedule and where we think they'd be the happiest.
I love that. So, what advice would you give to aspiring conductors and artistic directors that want
Oh
to get into
gosh.
the business?
Um, I would say figure out what you're going to bring to it, and why it's really for you to be doing what you're doing. I think, and that can take many forms. It can be somebody who has a passion for a certain type of music that doesn't get enough appreciation. It could be somebody bringing a type of music that's not usually in a certain spot to a certain city or geography. It could be bringing together different types of music that aren't usually together. Um, it could be educating, or it could be bringing together 100 people who are not professional singers and creating community that way. Just figuring out the why, I think, is really important. And for me, the why ended up being, I really enjoyed trying to bring people into a concert who wouldn't otherwise think that they like music like this. So that's kind of my
Absolutely.
job.
I love that. I love that. So now earlier on, you mentioned a few upcoming projects and performances that you guys are going to be doing. If you don't mind resharing that and provide the website where our listeners can go and they can celebrate you guys and also choose to come because I need to look at that as well so I can make sure I'm placed in one of those seats.
Yeah, of course. Well, so you can find us. We're at skylarkensemble.org, or if you Google, like, Skylark Choir or Skylark Vocal, you'll find us right away. We have all of our upcoming events there. Our subscription season, where we do a lot of concerts each year, is all around kind of the greater Boston area. So folks who are in that part of the world have a lot of chances to see us. But we often do tours. We're going to be actually in New York City twice this Christmas time. We're going to be at the Metropolitan Museum Cloisters doing a really beautiful Christmas program, and then we're also at the Morgan Library and Museum doing a program on the Dickens Christmas Carol with actress Christine Baranski narrating. So those are on our website as well. But we always keep that updated on future performances. So check us out.
All right, super fantastic. Now, with this, how do you envision the future of Skylark in like the next couple of years? Like, have you started even thinking about that? Or are you so engrossed into the right now, you're like, listen, I got to get through all of this right now. I know in 2025, you guys already have some things lined up, but what is your vision for Skylark in the next couple of years?
I certainly have to think about it because we kind of plan stuff so far in advance in this world. The vision really is to try to expand the number of people that get to hear us through trying to build more awareness for what we do and create opportunities for us to tour and do concerts around the country, or internationally when possible. Try to take the 8 weeks or so a year that our group is currently active and make that into 12 or 16 or more, and give more opportunities for our singers to make music together and for people to hear us. It really is kind of more of the same, and try to increase our reach is the hope.
All right. So before we end here, is there anything else you would like to impart or leave with our listeners in reference to Clear Voices in the Dark?
I don't think so. I think we've covered a lot. I would just say, listen with an open heart, and see if it moves you.
Absolutely. So, Matthew, I thank you for tuning in to In Depth with Miss Ty Barnett on Hindsight Media Radio 103.5 FM, where there's always something good to talk about. And everybody, remember to visit their website and to support them. Subscribe. They do have a subscription that's on their website. I've been there and took a look at it, and I said, all right, there you go. So, you have no reason to not place your hind parts in one of those seats to go support them. And I wish you guys the best of success. And again, Matthew, thank you so very much for your time this evening.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Absolutely.